Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
So let's get the views of Andrew Pearce and Kevin Maguire. Kind of two stories in town, I suppose. Should we start with the political one, that being your vein, and the Telegraph tax
beyond his intelligence, and it is, it's humiliating for him. They didn't put in their manifesto they were going to cut tax credits. Then he didn't put the proposal in the finance bill, the budget. The Lords wouldn't be able to touch it. He thought he'd sneak it through a regulation, statutory instrument. He's got a very, very bloody nose, and I think he was rather sour when he was responding to this. I mean, he doesn't really listen. He doesn't hear anything these days, Osborne. But it's a big bloke with his own leadership ambitions. But of course, the real story and the significance is the old blue bloods in the Tory party were saying they were going to represent blue-collar Britain, but they were going to steal their incomes. 4.4 billion was coming from tax credits. The very welcome increase in the minimum wage was going to be turned into an income cut. And Osborne has been an idiot, and he's paying a very high price, which will have a lot of ramifications now.
Well, it's certainly not his finest hour, and he didn't handle it brilliantly, to say the least. But you cannot get away from one important fact. Tax credits need massive reform, because what they are, taxpayers are subsidising lower paid workers when employers should be paying them more money. When Brown brought them in, it was a deliberate political fix. He wanted to it was all about the client state, a massive expansion of the client state. They were only around £1.5 to £2 billion a year. They were costing when they came in. They've now soared to nearly 30.
Right. Sometimes it's a single mom who can't actually work as many hours as she needs to make up her income because she has to look after her children.
Far too many people are getting tax credits. MPs were getting tax credits, and we know Steve Webb, the pensions minister in the last Parliament, applied for a tax credit. He was earning £67,000 a year, and he was told
he was
entitled to it.
No,
it was a test. It was a test, and he was told he was entitled to it. So it needs reforming. It's got far too out of control, far too much. And when Maguire says it wasn't in the manifesto, what was in the Tory manifesto was this: that they were going to cut the welfare bill by £12 billion. They didn't specify how they were going to do it. This was one way.
It used to frustrate me that we couldn't pin down your mob on this, because you knew what they were going to do, and they're going to hit working people as they were pretending they were going to represent them, and got some of them to vote for them, who now bitterly regret it when they see what's going to happen to their incomes. And of course, both David Cameron and Michael Gove, who was then the Chief Whip, he's now the Injustice Secretary, both said they wouldn't touch them. But this £1.5 billion figure you talk about when they came in, that was a 6-month period in that year. And of course, what tax credits did is they replaced a lot of other benefits you got. And the cost of those at that time was about 10 billion. And it's true it's 28 billion now. One of the reasons for that is the big expansion in low-paid jobs, certainly since the financial crisis. This is why 6 million people don't earn a living wage. And the truth about tax credits is it's not just subsidising poor employers, and I agree they've got to be made to pay more, and the increase in the minimum wage are right. It's redistribution. It is giving money to lower paid families and families with children. That's what it. That's why you hate it. You hate the R word.
Complicated, unwieldy.
You want to leave people to be poor and not support them.
They're complicated. They're bureaucratic. They're cumbersome. And
redistribute.
And actually, they've got to cut the bill. The fact is, this country's in huge debt, and they've got to find a way to cut. Now, I'll admit, I don't think George Osborne handled this very well, and he's going to have to go back to the drawing board. But the Lords bang out of order, because it's only the 5th time, or is it the 6th time in 100 years that a statutory instrument has been voted down in the Lords. None of those, however, before were financed. And the Lords are unelected, unaccountable, full of cronies, too many of them, and this now means, I think, all sorts of people, even on the Tory side, are going to say we're going to have to speed up a way of reforming the Lords, because this was Labour and Liberal peers who were decisively beaten at the general election, voting this down.
Not only...
And this was through... Hang on. Important here. 3 times
you're wasting
this was
oxygen.
Voted through. What? 3 times this was voted through in the Commons by elected MPs. 3 times. Unelected Labour and Lib Dem peers voted down.
Not only were the tax credit cuts not in the manifesto, and Cameron and Gove said they wouldn't touch them, Osborne, clever clogs, is paying a price for not putting them in the budget, because the House of Lords couldn't have touched the budget.
He said that already.
But he thought he could get away. He thought he could get away with it like that. Your mate Cameron, in his manifesto, said reforming the House of Lords was a low priority. I've read it.
Not now.
You haven't, and he's been packing it with Tory peers. Look, he's brought back Lord Lloyd Webber, probably business class or first class, called back from the US to vote to cut the incomes of low-income families. Is this what you lot have come to? Flying people back in luxury to cut the incomes of working Britons, the strivers, the grafters, those who get up early, those you try
to assert the authority of the Commons over the Lords, which should always be on financial matters.
So if this continues, and I think the Lords have voted down, was it 3/4 of the bills since May, is that right? If they continue to assert their authority, in which the Tory party does not have a majority, will we be at loggerheads for the remaining?
Well, it's about 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah,
exactly. And they can use the Parliament Act if it was in the manifesto.
About if they continue on other measures, for example.
Oh, they could.
And they can continue for the next 4.5 years, can't they?
You mentioned the statutory instruments were voted out. Most of them were voted down in the Labour period. It's very interesting when I heard Tory peers saying you can't touch finance. Well, when Labour was in 2008 or 2009, they tried to shackle Labour over increasing national insurance for the very wealthiest or the highest earners. So they've done it before. I mean, I would get rid of the place. I think they've done the right thing today. But as a fundamental principle, we should elect the people who make our laws.
He'll be attacking his forelock next time he goes in there.
You have been defending the system that's blown up in your face. There's no point coming a right-winger now and moaning. It's your system.
It's interesting, though, isn't it, to see which of the newspapers have gone for the working families angle of this, which is the tax credits themselves, or ones like The Guardian, which have gone for this Lord's constitutional crisis element, and the PM's warning about this.
I'm surprised The Guardian hasn't gone on the substantive issue of the actual tax credits being.
They might feel like they've done that enough,
delayed, and they've gone for the constitutional crisis, while the Telegraph, the Tory graph, is gone for you'll have to give people more money, while I suppose The Guardian quite likes a good constitutional row in.
I'd have to say, the Labour peer Patricia Hollis, Baroness Hollis, she made a very fine speech in the Lords today, but some of the speeches were appalling. I think they probably have to have people holding the pages for them. They'll have to have massive writing too. I mean, you just look at the Lords and you think there are so many people there should have been pensioned off a long time ago.
Is there an age limit?
No.
Should there be?
Yes.
Obviously, you will. Obviously.
Well, no, hang on. You should be. If you want to vote
people
in
the Commons too. All his mates are in their 80s.
You should.
Dennis Skinner, 84, said he'd retire at 65, so he wouldn't take a job off another man. He's had another job for another man for 20 years.
I think he's 83, and the NUM changed its policy on that. The National Union of Mine Workers for anyone under 50. But I think whether you want to vote somebody in 18 or 90 doesn't matter. It's the principle. We should be able to elect people. Some people in their 80s and 90s will be more on the ball than you and me.
Certainly more on the ball than you.